What's up, guys? How's everybody doing?
What's going on, Gavin?
Crazy,
What's up?
Week 6 already. Or I guess it's our sixth podcast, but what is it, week 8 for IHSA now?
Well, May's almost here. So playoffs are right around the corner. A lot of these teams are starting to separate themselves, prove that they're worthy and teams to watch come playoff time. But, man, the weather's starting to break, and, it's a good time of the year.
Yeah, I feel like it feels like it just started, so it's crazy. But I mean, this past week there were some like really good performances, and Louis Sisto and Cam Yearsley were two guys that we had named our players of the week. Yearsley has just been dominating so far, it seems like.
Yeah, Cam, John A. Logan commit. He actually won our player of the week. It was funny. Me and Diego were talking about it. We were down at John A. for a scout day, and Coach Soup was like, "Hey, what do you guys got on Cam?" And Diego was like, "Yeah, he can hit a little bit." And it looks like he can do more than hit a little bit. He let's see, what did he do? He finished 12 for 20 on the week. 4 home runs. He had a triple, 3 doubles. Sorry, 20 RBIs, and then 11 runs scored and 3 walks. He actually won the National Player of the Week for us, which is pretty cool. I think that's the first time someone from Illinois has done that this year. And then at the time, he was hitting 500 on this is in the story I wrote last week. He was hitting 500 as of Tuesday, and he had 7 home runs. Now he's got 9 already after writing that story. So kid just continues to hit. And then our pitcher of the week, we got Louis Sisto, some Chicago Catholic Blue action there. He took down St. Laurence in a complete game. I think it was 8 innings, actually. 8 innings, complete game win, shutout. So that's one of the tougher things when it gets to like picking who wins the awards. Like we definitely take into account like who they played, the situation, and that just kind of felt like a no-brainer. Like there were some guys that had more strikeouts, maybe less hits. I think he gave up like 6 hits on the week, or on the game. But that performance with all that on the line, that was just kind of a no-brainer for us. Like going in, taking the game from St. Lawrence, number 2 in the state, 8 innings. You hardly ever see that. So yeah.
No, I think that's a great point, Gavin, and sorry to jump in right there, but
No, you're good.
selecting the player of the week's hard. Hitter of the week, pitcher of the week. It's luckily for us, we get a ton of good submissions and nominations from the coaches that makes it difficult. But yes, looking at the competition level is huge. Prospect, level as well. How legit of a prospect is it plays a role. But that being said, it's not that a small school guy can't win it. He just needs to go a little bit above and beyond. And a 4A guy, a guy that's pitching in the Catholic Blue, if he has a performance like Louis Sisto, that holds a ton of weight. So definitely a difficult decision every week, and one we do not take lightly. But kudos to Sisto there, leading St. Rita to a huge win.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to mention about him, this is my second year now doing the Diamond Notes, and last year he was always mentioned in the Diamond Notes. He always low strikeout guy. He's never going to have 10, 15 strikeouts, but he just gets outs. He wins the game, and he's been doing the same this year when I've been checking on their game changers. So kudos to him, player of the week or pitcher of the week, and beating a good St. Lawrence team.
No, he's just kind of a guy that in my time here, I've gotten super familiar seeing his name. He's kind of been their guy for a while on the mound. They speak super highly of him over there. So, yeah.
I've even seen his left-handed bat. I've seen his left-handed bat getting some big hits for St. Rita. I didn't even know he was the hitter last year. But a couple times, I think he had a game-winning knock a couple weeks ago. But yeah, Gavin, getting into teams here, Power 25. Anything you want to touch on?
Yeah, before we really get into it, I mean, obviously, so we've got Naz at number 1 still. I just wanted to mention, I mean, last night, him and I interviewed Coach Milano, Naz's coach. It was awesome, and that interview will be at the end of this podcast. Really good conversation with him, just talking through his team and his career so far. And I mean, 600 wins this weekend, that's a huge accomplishment for him. So, again, just a big shout-out to Coach Milano for that. Big honor.
Well, and they're 25-0, Gavin. So you chose a good time to have them on here. They're undefeated. They're coming off back-to-back state titles. They're 4A now. And he picked up his 600th win last week. So glad you got to chat with him. And they keep rolling. There's really not a ton to say about Nazareth. They're at the head of the class, head of the state here until at least they take a loss. But they just keep doing it. Jaden Fauski went off this week. Just looking at the stat lines, went 9 for 12 with 2 home runs, 2 doubles, a triple, 7 RBIs, and 5 runs scored. And at least in my opinion, he's one of the top bats in the Midwest in that 2025 class. I think he'll warrant a ton of attention on the pro circuit this summer. And we'll see what happens going into the fall and Jupiter and some of those big events that he'll play in. But definitely a name to know in the state and one to potentially know for the draft next year. At number 2, we still have Joliet Catholic. They're like Naz, like they just keep rolling. They went 3-0 on the week. They're 19-2 on the season. Jacob Gimbel had another big game in their win against Carmel. He threw a complete game with 10 strikeouts, 1 walk, 1 run, 6 hits. And he's a guy we've talked about a lot on these podcasts because every time we see him, it seems like he puts up a stat line like that. He just fills up the strike zone, misses bats, competes. And he's a really good arm there for Joliet Catholic. Number 3, Lincoln Way West. I just got my first look at them on Saturday. I know Hammett has seen them. In another year, in a different year, they'd maybe be number 1 in the state. They're 20-0 and they are playing really good baseball and they're just kind of locked right now. They can't really go up until Joliet Catholic loses or Naz loses again. Joliet Catholic's got a ton of good wins on the season. Naz has yet to lose. They're just kind of in that spot, but to me, it's almost like take your pick in the top 3. That's how good all 3 of those teams are. And really, really cool to see for Lincoln Way West because we did not have them, as a top 10, top 25 team in the preseason, and they just keep doing it. And I know Hammett saw them last week against Downers Grove North. I got a quick look at them on Saturday against Lemont. And Hammett, I don't know if you had any takeaways, but there were plenty of takeaways for me.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I mean, Connor Essenberg, if you had to have me pick one player in the state to go win me a game right now, it'd probably be him on the mound. I mean, the pure stuff alone is, top of the line in the state, but the compete factor is, I think, the separator for him. Like that dude is not scared of anybody or anything. He goes right after you, and he has one of the best bats in the state. Like he can really hit. So having him on both
Yeah.
sides of the ball, I mean, that is a luxury for sure. And one thing that I talked about, I think last week, their coach is super high on that whole lineup. No one guy has really been doing it for them offensively, and you can see that. Like at least I've seen that when I watch them play. They get contributions 1 through 9. Like there is no holes. Everyone's doing something. Like they got seniors coming in, pinch hitting. They got seniors that'll just play the field, like, and they don't care. Like they know their role. They're all playing. At the end of the day, they're all just trying to win. They're all just trying to do their part, and they're all bought into that over there.
Yeah, we'll get into more on those games, I'm sure, at the end of this call, and we can break them down even more. But one just overarching thing I had on Lincoln Way West was the way they carried themselves. There was zero panic the entire game. They were ultra confident. They just went about their business. They all look good in the uniform. Like credit to their equipment guy. Whoever sizes up those pants in uniform, I mean, they look the part, and I think that's half the battle. Like just looking the part, and they wear the uniform well. So they're still at number 3 this week. Actually, not
And
still at
Drew,
number 3. Yeah, go ahead, Gavin.
one thing I wanted to say about Lincoln Way West is just big shout out to them. I mean, they come start the year not ranked, and then they come in here. They're number 3. They're 20-0. They just dominate. So huge shout out to the Warriors for that. I mean, that's big time.
Completely
big year
agree.
for them.
Yeah, and they moved up a spot. They were at number 4 last week. Now they're at number 3. Number 5 is down in Diego's neck of the woods down there. I can let you take it from there with Edwardsville coming in at number 5.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about them a lot. Obviously, the back-to-back 4A state champs, kind of hard to miss. Not the sexiest record, 14-6. Had some question marks kind of going into the year. You know, you graduate the first 5 hitters on a state champion lineup, all seniors, all guys that had been there for the year previously too, and they got guys stepping up. You know, Grayson Rathgeb, a guy that for me has done nothing but improve the last 12 months. It's a great body, still uncommitted, 2025 outfielder, plays center field for them. Cleaned up his swing a lot. He's gotten stronger. Went 3 for 3 with a double and 2 RBIs in a big win over Alton this past weekend. But I think the story for these guys is and will continue to be the rest of the year what they do on the mound. They got Joe Chirotto, Alabama commit. He's as good as anybody in the entire state on the mound. I would take that guy over anybody personally to win me a baseball game. Tony Eberlin, TCU commit, 2026, really starting to throw the ball well for them. Kind of a guy that's always had dynamic stuff, but not really always in sync and in the zone. Well, seems like he's starting to figure it out. Comes out real good, upper 80s, can really spin a breaking ball and really trust a breaking ball too. And then behind those guys, you know, you got Hunter Baugh, 2026, you know, super competitive, not the biggest guy on the field, but he plays like he's 6'3", pumps the strike zone with a low to mid 80s fastball, can spin a breaking ball. You got Chase Milburn. You got Eric Herman. Like they got guys that will throw 5, 6, 7 innings for them that would get 20, 25, 30 innings for about 90% of the rosters in the entire state. And we kind of go back to the record, right? Like it's not as eye popping. It's not as sexy as some of the teams in the state, but it's also because they play an absolute gauntlet and it's on purpose. It's to be ready by the time the playoffs roll around. And when you talk about coaching staffs, like those guys are about as good as anybody as it gets. So number 5, definitely an opportunity to keep climbing. They're going to be battle tested. They're going to keep playing good teams. They got Glenwood coming down to play them on Friday. So Edwardsville looking every bit the part of a state title contender once again.
Well, and Diego, to your point, I mean, the strength of schedule is one of the hardest things we deal with when doing this Power 25. Especially this time of year, there's some smaller schools out there that have collected incredible records. I mean, you mentioned it on our call that we had going through the Power 25. DuQuoin, they're 25-1. We got to see them. And, you know, they don't play, you know, the CCL, the Fox Valley, some of these other conferences where every game's a really, really tough matchup. But that sticks out to you. When a team's 25-1, you're doing something right.
Yeah,
so
to me,
seeing that,
it's almost more impressive. Like when you have maybe you're taking losses, maybe you're only 7-8 games over 500, but every single team you're playing is really good. Like just to use Edwardsville as an example, and obviously there's other teams around the state too, but like they're going down to Indiana to play Carmel, which is one of the best teams in Indiana. They're going down to Kentucky to play McCracken County and CBC in Tennessee, which is one of the best teams in their 2 respective states. They'll bounce over to Missouri every year to play Francis Howell, who is basically the Edwardsville version of Illinois. They're the best team in Missouri basically every single year. Like, and on top of all that, those are just non-conference games. They're doing that while they're playing in the Southwestern Conference, which routinely has, you know, last year Xander Muth at Belleville East, he got paid $2 million. O'Fallon's good every single year. Collinsville has a Power 5 arm this year with a multitude of other arms behind him. Like Belleville West has had some legit dudes come out of there. So now you're talking like not only your conference schedule is really tough, but you're going out of your way to play really good teams. By the time that May rolls around, like nothing's going to surprise you at that point.
And I think we, as a staff, when we look at this, I think we try to reward coaches and teams that do that schedule hard non-conferences. I mean, Brother Rice is a team that always sticks out to me. They're not afraid to play anybody, and they've taken their losses this year, and they're having an up and down year. But come playoff time, they're probably going to be able to beat anybody. And you know they're not represented in our Power 25, and they've struggled in conference this year a little bit, but they're one school that just always sticks out to me like that. Lincoln Way East, same deal. And they're starting to play some better baseball. But it's no perfect science doing this and going through it. And we try to, dig into everything. And there are so many good records to look at. I mean, just going through our list right now, teams that are not on the Power 25. You've got Morris at 18-3, Sandburg at 15-5, Conant at 15-3, Morton at 16-3, Evanston's 14-5-1, DuQuoin 25-1, Highlands 19-1-1, Dunlap's 18-3. So first off, it's no easy task to get into the Power 25. But secondly, there's a lot of good teams that are just knocking on the door, and it is what it is, and we're doing our best to figure it out and to sift through it all. But sorry for the tangent on that, because I know we got to get through the Power 25 here and talk about these teams that are rising and playing well. And New Trier is certainly one of them. They've rattled off 13 wins in a row. I personally got to look at New Trier at the start of the season at the Kickoff Classic, and they were without Trey Myers at the time. He's back healthy. Just looking at what he did this past week, he went 3 for 4 with 2 doubles, an RBI, 2 runs scored in a 4-0 win over Glenbrook South. I see Max Kaplan, who I saw that day. He's the ace of their staff, and you want to talk about a guy that you would take to win a game. Max Kaplan's also that definition. And he's not going to get you with the velo. He's not a 93 guy. He's like an 83, 85 guy, but he can throw the changeup at any time, breaking ball. He's competitive. It's nothing but strikes. So they've got a true number one over there. It also looks like Wyatt Nelson, a senior for them, who's going to Augustana. Earned the win on the mound in a 13-0 win over Maine West, throwing 5 innings, striking out 7. They're deep. They're talented. They're 16-3. They're coming off a 3-0 week. Somebody want to take us through St. Laurence here, because it looks like they had a dominant week as well, and they're up to number 7.
Yeah, I saw them against Provi. It was a 2-0 win. They took them down. That is just a all-around good club. They got Joe Olson back. I saw him throw again for the second time this year. That's just another dude that, if he's on the mound, you feel really good about winning the game. I'll break down his stat line when I go through that game. But yeah, that's just a really, really good arm to have at the top of that rotation. They got bats down the lineup. A lot of sophomores that I really like too, like Corey Less and Daniel Coyle. Those dudes, they're contributing big, and they're only sophomores. But yeah, I mean, they got depth on both sides of the ball. Go to Cannon Mosher, I don't know how to say that. He closed it for him. Good. He's been getting innings for them since his freshman year. So that is just a tough, hard-nosed group. Sorry
to cut you off.
You're good.
That Cannon Mosier and Joe Olson little combination there, they've been doing that now for a couple of years at Laurence.
Mm-hmm.
They'll start Olson, and then they bring in Mosier after him. So to see that's kind of still holding true here in 2024 is pretty cool to see. Coach Lotus doing that thing. And something just like a little nugget on Laurence is they were our number 2 team 2 weeks ago, and they fell to number 8 because they had a tough week. They went 2-3, but they're back 4-0 week, and we're talking about them climbing again. So, that's how quick it can change. The landscape can change here. So sorry to cut you off, Peter, but
no, you're good.
Just interesting stuff there on the Vikings.
Yeah. I was going to move on to Joliet West.
Yeah.
Number 8 now, 22-4. They had a 4-0 week as well. Congrats to James Love. He is the new Joliet West all-time hit leader with 136. And I know he's not planning on not getting
slowing down
for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So he's going to add to that lead.
And
that's
just on Twitter, I keep seeing James Love posting videos of hitting bombs, getting hits. I mean, the dude just seems like he's tearing it up this year. So big shout out to him for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is tearing it up. So good for him.
I was going to jump in here and just talk through Joliet West, because a little bit like Lincoln Way West, they started the season unranked. They jumped in at number 25, and they've been steadily climbing up the board ever since. They went from 25 to 22 to 13 to 11, and now to 8, which is the best ranking they've had all season. Collected a win against Lockport 10-6, and then had a 3-game sweep against Plainfield South. So Really, really good stuff there from Coach Karch.
Before we get too far, back to Joe Olson quick.
Yeah.
I remember at my intern year with PBR.
Yeah.
The first high school game I ever went to after our scout day, I think we go out to St. Lawrence.
I remember it.
It's St. Lawrence versus
Marist,
right?
yeah.
In the super sectional game. Joe Olson's pitching. He's a freshman, I believe, at the time. He was committed to Louisville at the time still. And he just dominated that game. And I remember coming out of that game, that being my first, I guess, scouting experience, thinking, this dude is incredible. Like, he is the next big thing. So, no, he's crushing it for St. Lawrence still, so that's big time for him.
And another team playing well, Gavin, St. Charles North, they went 4-0 on the week, and they're up 2 spots to number 14. Just looking at their wins on the week, they took 2 from Wheaton Warrenville South. They also knocked off Hoffman Estates 10-2 and took down St. Charles East, which is their rival, 5-3. And they have 2 more games coming up this week against East, which will be huge. So they're at number 14. They're playing well. Number 18, Glenwood. They're standing out as well.
Yeah, I mean, they had a 2-0 week with 2 wins over Rochester, and they're now 18-2 on the year. I mean, they're a scrappy lineup. They've got Cam Appenzeller. I know we've talked about him, but kid's a stud. Every time he takes them out, the teams that have to face him are going to have a tough day for sure. But honestly, what stuck out to me this week is the 2026 Dylan Huff getting the start for him. In a conference game, big conference game for him. He strikes out 5, and they beat Rochester 2-1 in that game. So go ahead.
No, looking at their note on them, they won 15 games in a row.
Yeah.
So they're about as hot as it gets.
Yep. And I mean, I know Diego, Drew, you guys have seen them too, but I mean, they're just a scrappy team, and they're going to find ways to win.
Yeah.
It's just another one of those programs that there's a select few that every single year you can chalk it up. It doesn't matter what the roster looks like. They're going to be good. They're going to win a bunch of games, and that conference is no joke, man. Like they're going to play some pretty good teams. And for them to have won 15 games in a row, like you mentioned Appenzeller, he's about as good as it gets in the whole state. But like if Dylan Huff is stepping up and pitching like kind of a conference guy and kind of taking that maturity level as a sophomore, like, and they have some older arms that can come out of the pen after those 2 guys, that's going to be a team that's going to make some noise at 3A. You know, like as recently as I believe 2022, they finished as state runner-up in 3A, losing to NAS. So in the state championship game, if that's correct. So.
Yeah. And then, one thing I wanted to mention, it kind of pains me to say this as the Central Illinois guy, but Monticello taking their first couple losses of the year. I was actually at their first loss against Pontiac when Henry Brummel pitched. That kid's a stud. He, quick arm, just dominated the game, 16 strikeouts. He was up to 93 with his fastball. Breaking balls were really good. And I actually saw him last year in a regional or sectional game, I think, at Eureka. And I didn't think the breaking balls were as good then, but now, I mean, he's throwing them for strikes, good shape on both a slider and a curveball. And then, you know, he's going up against a good Monticello team. They got a good lineup 1 through 9, so really impressed with him there.
And he's long been a fan favorite of Diego Solares. And I know that he's garnering some pro interest here. There was some reports that came out early in the spring that the velo was getting up there, and I know you saw him up to 93, but there were some pro guys out there to get some looks at him too, right, Kevin?
Yeah, there was probably 15 to 20 guys there. And actually one thing to mention about that, I was talking to one of the area scouts, and he was saying that so throughout the game, Brummel's breaking ball velos were the same. And his fastball velo dropped slightly, not a ton, but throughout the entire game, curveball and slider velo stayed the same. And he said, I think in his 25 years of doing that, whenever he sees a guy with the velos that stay the same on the breaking balls, it's likely that his fastball velo will continue to go up, and you can kind of assume that that's a projectable arm and one that will continue to get better. So I thought that was a really interesting nugget about Brummel.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, too, just looking at Henry. Yeah, go ahead, Diego.
He just from the state games last year, like he was on our pro case team, and the velocity was similar to what you saw, Gav. But it's just like there's so many boxes that a guy like Henry Brummel checks for me. He's got the body. He's a big kid. There's still room. Like when he's 20, 21 years old, you could definitely see him being 15, 20 pounds heavier than he is now. He's a small town kid, right? He plays basketball, which I love multi-sport guys, especially like a guy like Henry Brummel. If you look at his highlight reel, he can kind of throw it down a little bit, similarly to what Walters was doing his junior year. But it just is what it is. Like,
too, as you're talking.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty hard. It's pretty hard to put on velocity and put on not necessarily velocity, but muscle mass and sustain it when you're playing basketball for 4 months, 5 months, because obviously all the running that takes place and the minutes that you're playing. So like you take a small town kid that has been doing that probably since he was 9, 10 years old. Once he's done, like once he gets to college or pro ball, whatever it is, and it's baseball only, like you could totally see that velocity skyrocketing. That was the big thing with Walters. Like, yes, he stopped playing basketball, and yes, his weight regimen and weight training was super dialed in and he really got after it. But like being able to only focus on baseball for probably the first time in his entire life is going to really help that kid. And I think he's very far away from what his future ceiling will be, whether it's with Indiana or with whatever pro team takes a shot on him in the draft.
I was going to say, it'll be interesting to see how he finishes up the spring here and what happens with him, because he's certainly on our radar and a guy we're paying attention to.
He was just an absolute competitor on the mound too. I mean, you could just tell by watching this kid, he's like, I'm not losing today. And I'm sure that he's like that almost every outing as well for Pontiac that he pitches. So I thought that was really impressive too, just his motor and his competitiveness. But Sycamore, they're another Power 25 team, got their first loss of the year. I think they actually lost 2 this week. But I actually want to give a quick little shout out to Jackson Keys of DeKalb. He was pitching and he threw a complete game for DeKalb and their win over Sycamore. And actually, we were last week, I want to say, we were going through some reports from our McHenry event this past winter, and we were talking through Jackson Keys. He's just an interesting arm. He's like an uncommitted 2025. He's a wiry, big body kid. We had him up to 85 on the TrackMan this winter. So kudos to him. That's a big win.
It's funny you mention his name and we're talking about these multi-sport guys, because chalk it up, he's another one. He's a basketball player. He's got that high waist, long levers. He's a loose-bodied guy. There's so much more to come with him. I got a quick look at him in the fall, and exactly what you're talking about. It was like mid-80s. He's an over-the-top guy. He gets some tilt on the fastball, creates angle, and it's a true 12-6 breaking ball off of it. But everything works right. He's a fluid mover, and I think like a Brummel, like these two-sport guys, the best is yet to come with him. And I know people that know Jackson are really high on him as well. So that's a great little call out there, Gavin.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big win. I mean, Sycamore's got a really good lineup too. A lot of good bats there too. So big shout out to him. And then kind of looking at the teams that are new to the Power 25. I mean, we always have a couple, maybe 1, 2, 3 teams that get in, and it's really tough to get into the Power 25, like you mentioned earlier, Drew. But let's kind of talk through like McHenry and St. Rita. They're 2 teams that jumped in, and like why did we slot them in here? What about them really stood out to us and things like that?
Yeah.
I got to give love. I got to give love to the Fox Valley. McHenry jumps in for the first time, number 17. They're 19-4 on the year. They won 4 games last week. They beat Mundelein. They beat Cary Grove. They beat Hampshire. This is a team that for the last 6, 7, 8 years, like, they're always really good. They're always going to be well coached. They're always going to be competitive. They've had some legit players come out of there. Bobby Miller with the Dodgers went to McHenry. And the Fox Valley is no joke. I know you guys mess with me and joke about it or whatever, but it's a tough conference. It is. Like, there's a reason that 3 years in a row a team from that conference went to state, 17, 18, and 19. So McHenry, they're battle-tested. They have a good resume. They have 2 big arms, Brendan Shannon, who is Drew's like favorite player in the state apparently now, and Caden Wozniewski at 2027, who is legit on both sides of the ball. Tyler Deffabaugh, who's not with us today on this call, but he's seen McHenry. He loved them. He loves Wozniewski too. Owen McClingoff, a senior for them, big week, 8 for 14, 2 doubles, 3 RBIs, 3 runs scored, and a walk. It's a team that they have a pedigree of winning. They're hot, and they look like they can beat anybody on any given day.
think that was well said, Diego. And speaking of Caden Wisniewski, like he came up on varsity and started pitching for them, pitched well, and it seemed like he kind of had to earn his way with the bat, and he has fully earned his way with the bat. He's hitting the middle of that lineup now, and just another weapon for that offense. And outside of McHenry, there was one other team that jumped in, and they've been. First off, they were ranked preseason. They've been a team we've liked. They've been on our radar, and they're part of the CCL Blue. So a deal with that conference when you play in is that they tend to beat up on each other. And it's St. Rita. St. Rita jumps in at number 24. They're 16-8, but they've got a lot of good wins. They have played a tough schedule. They went 3-1 on the week. They took down Brother Rice, St. Ignatius, DePaul College Prep. And they beat out some really good teams to get onto this list. Whether that's warranted or not, I think that's up for debate. Because there really is. It's a take your pick here with so many good teams that are on the bubble and maybe aren't getting the love that they think they deserve. So hopefully they earn it and prove it to us that, hey, we were a team that should have been jumping in. Because a team like Andrew, we were looking really hard at Andrew. They've got a bunch of good wins like Rita. They play a really good schedule. They've collected a lot of Power 25 wins on the season. But we went with Rita this week, and they're led by Sir Jamison Jones. He was a Super 60 participant. He's been one of our top prospects in the state for a long time now, and very, very offensive catcher that's been doing it behind the plate as well. And this past week, he went 2 for 5 with a home run, 5 RBIs, and a run scored in a 15-3 win over St. Ignatius. I know we talked on Louis Sisto earlier. He kind of leads that staff, but they've got Chris McGrath, senior, going to Rock Valley, who's been pitching well. And this past week, he went 5 innings against Brother Rice in the 10-0 win, struck out 4. He also went 6 innings with 9 Ks and an 8-3 win over to Paul College Prep. So they're getting some production from him. And yeah, we'll see what happens because they do play in the CCL. So good weeks and bad weeks, they can come pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure. And then kind of looking at some games we've gone to, it's a super good opportunity for us to just get looks at these players outside of a showcase setting. I think the in-game look is probably the most important thing that we can see of a player because it really shows what they actually do as a baseball player. But I got to see Monticello and Pontiac, so I saw that game that Brummel beat Monticello, who I want to say was number 15 at the time. I already talked about Brummel a little bit, but I kind of want to mention Ike Young. He's an uncommitted right-handed pitcher. He's a junior, really quick arm. He's up to 90 miles an hour with his fastball. I think he threw 3 or 4 90-mile-an-hour fastballs in a row to start the game, and then he was sitting mostly in the upper 80s. He is one that popped on our radar, and actually popped on Hammett's radar, I think in the fall at a tournament in Rantoul. So I'll kind of let Hammett talk about that more, but he's just he's an interesting uncommitted junior for us that kind of popped up recently.
Yeah, I remember one of the umpires who was a young kid, I think went to high school with him. He's like, yeah, this Ike kid, he's going to be like low 80s. And I was like, yeah, okay, buddy, sure. Yeah, right. And then he comes out, I forget what he was actually up to, but it was like 85, 86, just the loosest arm you've ever seen. I was like, all right, well, maybe this kid does know what he's talking about. Kind of felt bad about not believing him. But yeah, it's a high ceiling kid. Yeah, I love the way the fastball comes out. He plays shortstop too, I think, for them, right, Gav?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the interesting thing about him is he lists himself as a shortstop. So it's almost like he's newer to pitching, which is really good for Ike. That's crazy that he's coming out here throwing 90 now if he is newer to pitching.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's one position you'd want your pitcher to play when he's not pitching, it'd probably be shortstop. So that's good. That's good for him.
Yeah, and he kind of reminds me. So I saw Luke Teschke last year, and Luke's stuff was a little bit better than Ike is right now, but just the way that they move and their arms, it reminds me of each other a lot. Their delivery, their arm action, it's super similar.
Yeah, obviously sitting here from afar, you're the one that got the look, Gav, but just looking at the video that you sent us, like I couldn't have been more in. Small town kid, high waist, quick arm. Like the way his arm accelerates out front for me is just it's elite. Honestly, it's like real arm speed, and even the breaking ball. Like right now, it's not super refined, but like with more consistency and with how fast his arm is, like if you just get him to throw that thing a little harder and a little more intentful, like I could see that being a power curve, like Josh McDevitt type 68 or 78, 82, 83 mile an hour curve that just drops off a cliff real quick. Maybe not huge spin, but huge power action to it. Like that guy coming out of a bullpen and just blowing it out at 92, 94 with a hammer breaking ball. It's a really good arm. I was super intrigued from what you had sent us over.
Yeah, so that's an arm to know down there in Central Illinois, and I mean Monticello's got Ike Young and they've got Luke Teschke, so two really good arms there for a 2A school. And then actually on Saturday I went to Mattoon to see Mattoon and Taylorville. There was a couple arms that Mattoon has that we wanted to get a look at, and then Taylorville we knew of Max Green. So touching on Green first. He's got a really strong build. He's an athletic kid, and just from brief interactions that we've had, he seems like just a really good kid and a really hard worker. From reports we've gotten that he's in the gym all the time working out, and you can really see it with his body. He's a strong kid, but behind the plate, he's a really good receiver. Showed really quality actions, and he's a workhorse back there. And then at the plate, he had a home run on a kid throwing like low mid 80s. So really good look at Green there, and he's one to know that's going to be uncommitted in that sophomore class, and we have him ranked in pretty highly. So good catcher there for Taylorville. And then I saw Madden Johnson too. He's a really wiry kid, still hasn't kind of grown into his body yet, but he's got the bloodlines. His brother Mead pitched at Heartland, and he's at Maryland now. And I think I was looking at his brother's profile, and his brother's up to 96. So I think Diego was telling me that Mead was kind of one that popped later, maybe his senior year, and then once he got to Heartland, really started showing well. So Madden was, 83 to 85, had some arm side run, threw a pretty good slider, and I think the thing that impressed me the most about him was just his competitiveness. Worked with pace on the mound, really was just attacking hitters, and you can tell he is smart and knows how to pitch, trying to place it in certain spots to get guys out. So a really good look at Madden Johnson.
And Gav, just to touch on the Madden Mead Johnson story just a little bit more, is Mead popped for us late. I don't know when he popped exactly. I don't know what his velos were as a younger guy, just because we didn't have that track record on him. He hadn't been to anything. I didn't know the name. But his senior year, he came to the Unsigned Senior Showcase, and I was on his mound, and he blew me away. You want to talk about a fan favorite? I was all in, because, at the Unsigned Senior, it's a little bit of a crapshoot what you're going to get at those events. Just at that point, there are certainly still good players that are on the board. But typically you may get like, okay, here's a guy with some velo that doesn't spin it great, and that's maybe why he's still left on the board, or maybe the velo's a little light and he can really pitch. And me jumped off the page because he kind of had it all. Like, he was a good mover. His arm really worked. He had velo and he had feel. Like, there was all kinds of pitchability. So he jumped way up on our radar after that event, and had a successful career at Heartland, which was great to see. And like you mentioned, now he's at Maryland. So not like Madden, like you said, still kind of coming into his body. There's plenty of strength still to come there. And it'll be interesting to see kind of what pops for him, because throwing his slider at 74, 76 with that fastball at 83, 85, to me, that's a little bit of an indicator. That's pretty firm on the breaking ball that there could be some more velo to come. And we've liked Madden in the past. So
yeah, it's a clean arm, and he's athletic, and he moves well too. So
yeah, and just talking through more games, This will be for Hammett to talk through, but we both got to look at Lincoln Way West. They had been rolling, so I wanted to get out and kind of see what they were all about. So I saw them against Lemont. We had not seen Lemont yet this year, so it was a good matchup there. But Hammett, you saw Lincoln Way West versus Downers Grove North, which was a big matchup. Some highly ranked teams going at it.
Yeah, right in my backyard. It's always nice when I can just drive 10 minutes and see a Power 25 matchup, a top 10 matchup at that, actually. Yeah, Essenberg, saw him again. Didn't even know he was pitching that day, so that made it even better. Um, he lost a no-hitter in the seventh inning with 2 outs. Hurt my soul as a pitcher, seeing a little weak hit going to left field. But no, I mean, he was as dominant as he was the week before. 91, 92, touching 93 again. Um, Actually, I don't even know if he hit 93 last week. I think he set another PR because he hit
Yeah.
92. That was his
Yep.
PR last week, and then 93 this week. So that's cool. He just keeps getting better, throwing a little harder each week. Same stuff. Good curveball, good slider, good changeup. Had a hit or two on the day too. Anthony Massa had 3 hits, so he was kind of carrying the offense that day. And then Lucas Acevedo, junior Illinois Chicago commit. He came out and closed it. He only faced one hitter, but I was really impressed with what I saw briefly. He was up to 90, really good feel for the breaking ball, good action on it, and he had a really good changeup too. So it was 3 pitches, super brief look, but I was in. I was all in on that. Going from Essenberg to that is just not a fun day at the plate.
And just hearing you talking about Essenberg's performance, I mean, he's got to be one of the leading candidates for pitcher of the week.
Yeah,
We
for
talk
sure,
about
for
we
sure.
talk about what it takes to be a pitcher of the week, putting up a good stat line, but then also having the talent, having a tough matchup. I mean, Downers Grove North's offense is a very, very potent offense that
Yep.
he had locked up. I do know, you know, that's a tough matchup for DGN because they have a lot of left-hand. Like some of their best hitters are
Yeah.
left-handed hitters with Shal Moser and Warwick, but they do have Janicki in there and stuff like that. But man, really, really impressive.
Mhm.
And talking on Acevedo, I was lucky enough to see him for an inning as well. Come out of the pen for Lincoln Way West in my game, and pretty much same look as what you saw. Like what really stood out to me was the overall confidence he has on the mound, just the way he carries himself and his mannerisms, and
Yeah.
he knows he's good. He knows
It's like
he's good, and
a quiet confidence too. It's not even
yeah,
like it's not like in a bad way either.
nope, he's going about his business, but he knows he's good, and um, he did actually get touched up. One of his changeups got taken out to right field. Now it was not a good day to pitch. The day I was there, the wind was howling out, but he threw a changeup to Jacob Parr, who's a talented left-handed hitter for Lemont, and Parr got a little out front on the changeup, but had enough, back there, enough thump to put it out to right center. But go ahead. I'm sure you might want to touch on it, some guys that maybe stood out to you for Downers Grove North before I really get into what I saw.
Sure. Yeah. So I saw Braylon Tomlinson. He started for North. Arm I've really never heard of before. Didn't know anything about. Um, he threw it really well. Better than the line would suggest. I think he went like 4 1/3 or 2/3 or something. Um, but I was impressed with that kid. He was around 80. Good little curveball, just competed, filled up the zone. Um, Loose, looks like he's going to get stronger. But yeah, that was a really good look at him. So uncommitted 2025 lefty right there. Um, and then Jude Warwick. Um, he just gets better every time I see him, basically. Still needs to gain a little weight, but that is by no means, anything to worry about right now. But the way that kid moves around the infield, it is some of the best I've seen. The way he's able to move to both sides. I mean, he made a Derek Jeter throw across the infield to get somebody out. Um, I was talking to his mom. Hopefully, I don't get in trouble for saying this. He was he did ballet for a long time. I think until COVID, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Like, just that makes so much sense. Like the way he's able to move and his like how light he is on his feet. But I thought that was super cool. And he's
I I've heard of wide receivers doing that in
Yeah.
football.
Oh yeah.
Work on the
Oh yeah.
footwork.
Yeah. No, seriously,
Okay.
I think it's super cool. And then yeah, he was all over the barrel. He didn't get any hits, but a couple lineouts to center. I thought his at bats against Essenberg were really, really good. Left on left. Seeing it well, good swing decisions. I thought um, some of the better at bats on the day. It was really impressive. Like I said, no hits, but it still stood out to me. And then Jimmy Janicki just looks like an absolute freak out there. I know he's a football player. What is he? Probably a linebacker, if I had to
Yep.
guess. Yeah.
Hmm.
He's a stud. He can really catch behind the plate. His catch and throw is legit. He's trying to block everything, putting the body on the line, and then he's a strong right-handed hitter. I didn't see him do anything. Obviously, only one one guy got a hit. But yeah, no, I love the swing. Super simple, and he's got some crazy blast metrics. The hand speed and the bat speed are off the charts. So I'm excited for that kid as he gets into college and seeing what he can do at the next level.
Nice. So like I mentioned, I got to see Lincoln Way West versus Lemont. It was Saturday morning. The wind was howling. Everything was blowing straight out to center. So not a great day to pitch. And Lemont started Shea Glotzback. We had never seen him before, and I'm probably butchering that last name, so apologize, Shea. But he he's a interesting right-handed arm. Actually, just an interesting two-way prospect for Lemont. 2025 uncommitted. He's listed at 6'3", 155, and it's how you would draw it up. I mean, it's a long, levered, high-waisted, good-looking frame with more strength to come. On the mound, it works really clean. It was 86, 87, pretty straight fastball with a little breaking ball to pair, and showed a changeup, but did not throw it much in game. And when he did throw it, it wasn't in the zone. But I like the left-handed swing too. He stands in the box like a hitter. Took a couple good passes on some balls. Nothing really to show for it on that day, but that was to me a mention from that game for Lemont. Jacob Parr is another guy for them. Plays center field. Really good-looking prospect. Like a 6'3" frame, 6'4" frame, around 180 pounds with more to come. I mentioned earlier, got a home run off of Acevedo's changeup there late in the game, but he looks the part. Then you've got a guy named Matt DeVoy, another junior uncommitted. He was playing right field to start the game and probably had the best arm of any prospect on both teams in pregame. Throwing it from right field was really coming out good. Something that I love locking in on when I go to games is, not even just but not even the in out, but just watching guys play catch down the line. Sometimes you can gain a lot just from watching a guy play catch, how they carry themselves, how they receive a baseball, the way their arm works, the intent that they have going through their pregame routine, but then taking it into the in and out and seeing what you can see in and out. And he was a guy that stood out to me. And then he got on the mound out of the pen, was 83, 86, but it looked firmer. Like it had a little hop to it. It had a little giddy up. Was ripping a slider at 75 with all kinds of action and depth. Struggled to harness it, like was not throwing it for a strike very often, but the action is real. Like that is a real offering. Another guy that stood out to me for them, who's mostly a pitcher but was not pitching this day, was Cannon Madej. He was playing first base, but he's a left-handed hitter, had 2 knocks, pretty easy, loose, like calm presence to him in the box, and just flicked a couple barrels. But not even that's what stood out to me. His frame has ticked up tremendously. I saw him as a freshman pitch last year. Had a lot of pitchability, not a ton of velo yet, but he's going to be a guy we're going to want to get out and see on the mound. If that the way that frame is ticking up, I'm sure the stuff is ticking up as well. And then for Lincoln Way West, probably too many guys to touch on in this call with how potent the offense was, but man, they really impressed me. I mentioned it earlier, just with the look of the squad, the way they went about their business, the way they wear their uniforms, going up and down the lineup, just looking here. I think the guy that stood out the most was Jack Linko, their 3-hole going to Concordia. Big physical right-handed hitter, hits in their 3-hole. His first at bat with runners on first and second, he launched a ball to right center field for a 3-run home run. He also lined a single up the middle for an RBI, had a ground ball up the middle for another RBI, and walked as well. So big day for him. Lucas Acevedo reached base in all 5 at bats, had 3 barrels, smoked 3 balls to left field, and then also walked. So he stood out to me. Out of the pen, they brought in left-hander Colin McCarty. Did a good job for them. Kept Lemont off balance. Low 80s lefty. Went to Acevedo out of the pen. Did his thing. And also went to Benjamin Shea late in the game. And I just like Benjamin Shea as a player. Played second base. Really good presence in the box. Just one of those guys, Peter, that you mentioned earlier, up and down the lineup. They really don't have any holes, and he really fills out that lineup there in the 6 hole. But they're a good squad. Really enjoyed getting my eyes on them this Saturday to check them out. And man, they're gonna be a tough outcome playoff time. So we also saw Provi versus St. Lawrence this week, Peter. Providence Catholic, that is, for those that aren't privy to the nickname there. But Providence Catholic versus St. Lawrence. I know you touched on Joe Olson, but I'll let you take it and anything else that stood out to you.
Yeah, no, it was good to see Joe Olson back out there. He was 89-90, touching 91. I really love the way he works the top and the bottom of the zone. His control to both spots. He's not just laying it in there, let you hit it. He's actually trying to work around. Good slider or curveball. It's kind of a 1-7 shape. Getting some swing and miss in the mid-70s, and he'll flash that change up every now and again at 81. He earned the win. He went 6 innings, only gave up 4 hits, didn't allow a run, walked 3, and struck out 7. So it was a good outing for him. Big game. Chicago Catholic Blue matchup, a lot on the line there. Jamison Martin kind of powered the offense that day. He had a double in the top of the 7th to help add on to their lead. He went 3 for 4. He had 2 doubles on the day, actually, with an RBI. Then Daniel Coyle, he was the guy that stood out to me initially in IO. Just loved the way he moved around third base. And then it really played in game. Fluid defender, moves well to all angles, and he can swing it a little bit too. We've seen him hit down in Rantoul at some tournaments and stuff.
Yeah,
But,
I've long liked his bat. So to hear him showing that well at third base, like, to me, that's huge when you round out a profile of a player. A lot of these guys we see can really hit, but maybe defensively we're not so sure. So to hear that he was showing that well at third base, and the bat to ball has always been really good for me with Daniel. Professional line drive approach. So good to hear that. But I'll let you get back to it.
No, for sure. And then for Provi, Cooper Eggert, uncommitted 2025. He's a two-way guy that we like on both sides, but he got the start. He was up to 88. Basically every fastball he threw early was 88. Then he kind of settled in around the mid-upper 80s, like 85 to 87-ish. He's not scared to work inside. He was going in and out, righty and lefty, so not just like working both sides. A lot of kids will they can work both sides, but it's actually only like
their arm side or their glove side.
Or when the other hand is in the box.
Yep.
But he was going in to like righty and lefty. So that was good to see. Kind of a lateral slider that set up a little cutter too. Both are throwing pretty hard. The slider's like mid-upper 70s, and then the cutter was around 80. And he showed a little changeup around 81, 83. But he threw it super well. He was 6 innings, 4 hits, no runs, no walks, and 9 strikeouts. And I actually really liked his swing. Like I just said, two-way guy. Really fluid.
I've long loved the bat.
Sees it super deep, makes adjustments, really good bat to ball, just flicks the barrel through the zone. I was all in on that.
Nice. Good stuff. That's a big matchup there. You got to see some heavy hitters last week there with Downers Grove North, Lincoln Way West, and then Provi St. Lawrence. Good stuff.
It was my first time at Provi. That setup is pretty legit. It felt like a playoff game. Felt like a playoff game for sure.
Most of those CCL games, dude, there's some bad blood and guys that play
Mm-hmm.
summer teams, summer ball together on the same teams and know each other. They know each other pretty well.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, well, that's a wrap, guys, on episode 6 of the IHSA podcast. Appreciate you guys jumping on. I thought this turned out solid. But right after this, if you stick around, Coach Milano from Nazareth, we had an interview with him. Him and I interviewed him last night and just talked through their season and kind of his career so far. He just got to 600 wins, as we mentioned before. So huge congrats to Coach Milano on that again. And hope you guys enjoy the interview with him and appreciate you sticking around for.
Huge shout out to Lee Milano for jumping on the podcast and being up for doing it. And I know our guys really, really enjoyed the interview.
Mm-hmm. A lot of really good stuff. If you're just listening for fun or if you're a coach, a lot of really good information.
Well, great stuff. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Coach Milano, thanks for being here and doing this with us and taking the time to sit down and talk through your career at Naz and the 2024 season so far.
Well, it's my honor and pleasure to be here. I don't know how many coaches around remember when PBR started, but I definitely was a head coach when they did, and Sean Duncan started things up. And I'm very, very thankful for what you guys do for high school baseball, because no one really covers us, and definitely no one covers us like you guys do. So thank you so much.
We appreciate that. That means a lot. But kind of first things first, 600 wins. You got that on Saturday in you guys' win. So congratulations on that. That's a huge accomplishment. So
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of emotions after that game with yourself and the guys on the team.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I've been very, very blessed and fortunate to have so many great players and families and administrative support and support from my own family. 600 is, it encompasses anyone who's played on the varsity level in our program, and I really believe that.
Yeah, and kind of just looking through your accomplishments so far, in your time at Naz, you've got 15 regional championships, 9 sectional championships, 6 state appearances, and then 2 state championships in back-to-back years in 2022 and 2023. And if I'm wrong on any of that, correct me, but that's what I got from the IHSA website. So winning those back-to-back state titles, was there anything in those runs that really stuck out to you? Maybe a game that was you guys were down and came back and won, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, to make the finals 12 or 6 times in the last 12 seasons is incredible, and it's a testament to the players and the coaches that we have. The Lemont semifinal sectional game in 2022, we were down 5-0 late. We scored, I think, 3 in the 6th, and we were down to our last strike, I think, 9 times in the last inning. We had a kid come off the bench who had 4 plate appearances all year and got a base hit. We had the bases loaded down 5-3. Cole Reifstack was up with a 3-2 count and got hit to make it 5-4. And that put Lucas Smith, who was just such a clutch player for us in high school. And he was down to his last strike and he had to hit the left field. We ended up winning 6-5. And I if there's one game out of that 14-game run we've had the last 2 years in the playoffs, that was definitely the game that kind of changed things. And and the games against St. Laurence were great games, beating them 5-0 and 11-1 were great games. And any game you win in the playoffs you have to cherish, but those really stand out.
Yeah, for sure. And then winning a state championship alone is hard. Doing it back-to-back years is very hard. And you have had a lot of really good teams over the years that you've been coaching. But what do you think really was so different about this team last year and the year before that allowed you guys to win state, and maybe you weren't able to accomplish that feat prior?
Well, I think number one, I think this is to me and we've had a lot of talent, but the most talented group we've had. It's very unique when you have 4 or 6 players for 4 years, and they all started, at the end of that freshman year. I think that's a big part of why our success. I thought we were going to have a high level of success. I didn't know if we would have it when they were sophomores, but there's really nothing now that they do that surprises me. the group in general. And then, you have other classes, you have key players that play a role. In order to win, you have to have in baseball, you have to have a lot of things go your way as far as luck and health. And I do believe you create your own luck with that. But we've been fortunate, to get us over the hump. We've done some, a lot of mental work, a lot of mental training. And I think that's somewhat of a separator from some other things that programs do.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's super important for all baseball players at all levels to understand, but especially that high school age group. It's really important to understand the importance of that, the mental side of the game for sure. So kind of looking at your program as a whole now, what do you think is something that you kind of instill and the other coaches instill as, one, some of the goals for the Nazareth baseball program, and then kind of the principles of the Nazareth baseball program as well?
We try not to talk about goals really at all, because goals put a limitation on what you can do. We try to talk about the process, not the outcome. The culture of the program and the kids came up with this. And I did some work with a psychologist the last couple of years, Dr. Jason Ness, and he helped me with this. Our culture of our program talks about 4 cornerstones: accountability, citizenship, respect, and focus. And each of those areas have, sub areas that we talk about. So the kids came up with that on their own. This year, our motto is stay humble and grateful. And what we talk about in the program is not to look at that, way far ahead. That's all we do is we look at the next game. And then we try to break down that next game into innings. And then from innings, we try to break it down pitch by pitch. And I think that's been why we've had a lot of success. Because at the end of the day, I think I've had over 300 varsity baseball players at NAS in my time. We've had about 150 go on to play college ball. We've had about a dozen go on to play pro ball. But at the end of the day, our job as coaches and really educators is to make sure that these guys are going on and being productive citizens and family men. That's more important to me than anything. And I think that funnels down to kind of what the program is all about.
Coach, obviously you guys are extremely talented. But what else has contributed to your success? I know you talk about the mental game. One thing that I've seen that you guys do that actually reminds me a lot of what my team used to do in high school. We were a very close team, and I think that definitely helped play into why we were very good. The team dinners. That is something that I think goes a long way. Having different families host, everyone coming together. So just besides the talent, what has helped you be as successful as you are?
Yeah, it's really important, I think, to create that culture that you depend on your teammates. We do have Friday night team dinners. I host the first one always, and then other families sign up and host. We do kind of do something a little bit different. We don't usually practice on Fridays. I like, at the end of the week, we usually, the kids are tired. They've been in school all week. So we don't usually practice unless it's been a pretty rainy week. And we have Friday night team dinners. I really like to practice. We give one day off. I like to practice on Sundays because sometimes we're on the road on Monday. And if we can't hit before we leave from school. So I like to go Sunday night and hit. So they're a little bit fresh on Monday. But sometimes I give them Sundays off as the season goes on. But, the other thing we do, I'm a big believer in, we do volunteer work. One of the greatest things, I think it's the greatest thing we do as a group, we work a special needs Christmas party for an organization called Miracles in Progress. It's a very humbling experience for the young men to work with, some adults are in their 60s that have special needs all the way down to young children. So I think that's really important. That creates that culture and giving back. The dinners are important. We do a Christmas party. We have a grab bag. I think all those things make the program special. It's relationships that these kids build that are lifelong relationships. I've been to so many weddings where the wedding parties are basically all baseball players. We say the Serenity Prayer every day. and I don't endorse this, but I probably have a dozen players that have tattoos of the Serenity Prayer. I have a player that texted me a couple weeks ago. He just had a baby, and he said, I just want to thank you. My wife and I say the Serenity Prayer with our baby every day. So like stuff like that to me is more important than any state titles or anything we can do on the field.
Yeah, it really sounds like it's more just about creating that bond for not just the 4 years that they're there with you, but a lifetime, and I think that's super important. But kind of looking at the 2024 season, you guys are obviously off to a really good start, and you've returned a ton of players from last year's team. You jump up to 4A this year. How do you kind of manage the expectations with those players coming into this year, coming off of back-to-back state titles?
So the expectations we feel are what other people put on us. We look at that as really as noise. Our expectation is to go out there and be the best teammate and the best player we can on that day. And if we can't, get a hit, then we better play good defense. We better pick our pitcher up. Like that's why we try to break that game down to a very small pitch by pitch. Because I think if you start looking at rankings and people's expectations, you lose focus on the task at hand. So I think that's one thing this team has done. If I had to describe this team, in one word, it's focus. They're an extremely focused group that are very talented. And over the years, I've had players that are D1 commits, and sometimes you kind of feel like maybe they're holding back a little bit. They're looking at that next big thing, whether it's the draft or college ball. These guys don't do that. These guys are hungry. Even with the 7 D1 commits we have, they're hungry. They want to win, and they want to play, as possible perfect baseball that they can every game.
So, Coach, I remember it was that my second year with PBR? You guys were basically all sophomores, and you were still steamrolling a lot of teams. And I remember thinking, man, this team's going to be really dangerous the next couple of years. With guys like Cooper, David Cox, Nick Dertina, Jaden Fauski, John Hughes, Luca Fiore, Cole Reifstead, guys those are all D1 commits, and they've been with you for a while. How much of an advantage is it just having those guys be on varsity for that long?
So those 6 seniors have been on varsity for 4 years. I call them the core 6. And the Yankees used to have the core 4 in the late 90s and early 2000s. I call these guys the core 6. It's a once in a lifetime experience to have these guys. Their coaches on the field, they know exactly what the expectations are. Our philosophy is really simple on offense, is to score 1 run an inning, and on defense to avoid the big inning. And these guys understand that. Every guy in that lineup will bunt. Fauski's hitting, he's hitting like 550 right now. He's not afraid to lay a bunt down. Cooper's not afraid to lay a bunt down. They all understand their roles, and the goal is to score that 1 run an inning. Now, with that being said, it's I let them have a lot of freedom on offense because I trust them, and they've proven what they can do.
Now, if kind of piggybacking off that, if a kid is listening to this and they're at another school, maybe in downstate Illinois, wherever, and how would you coach your guys to get them to truly understand that it's about the team? It's not maybe every situation is not about me just trying to go up there and hit a home run. It's about trying to do what's best for the team. How do you kind of implement that with your guys, and maybe how could another player from another school take away that kind of lesson and implement it for themselves?
Well, I think it starts with communication. So I think, to communicate with their roster on what their role is going to be and what the expectations. I tell our guys on our roster, we have 23, at some point throughout the year, you're going to contribute to a victory. Whether it's coming in and give us an inning relief, whether it's pinch running, whether it's a defensive replacement. Like, I think it's really important to make sure that communication line is open so they understand where they are as far as what is needed to make the team successful. But in the age of social media, in the age of how important travel ball is, and I think it's extremely important, a lot of people get caught up on that Division I scholarship, and they have to impress the coaches the college guys. And we've had we've had as many as 15 pro guys out at a game this year. We've had SEC schools. We've had a lot of people come out, Big Ten, Louisville, people come out, and what we tell our guys is what we're going to control is from our dugout to the other team's foul line. Anything else, we're not going to worry about. Let's make sure we're playing for each other. And if you're good enough and you do the little things and you act the right way and deal with failure the right way, people are going to see you and they're going to find you. So I get it that, and I went through it. I have 4 kids. I went through it, and playing junior college ball. My oldest son playing at Butler Division I. It's a really tough process for people to, especially with the portal for the high school kids to get noticed. But you have to trust the process and let it play out.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice for anyone to take away and listen to right there. But one thing we wanted to just bring up quickly too was, and it's kind of I'm curious what your thoughts were on this game going into it, but you guys beat Joliet Catholic. They're a really talented team this year. So how did you kind of go into that game and get those guys to really focus on your dugout, your guys' game, what you guys can do to win that, rather than kind of getting too caught up in the moment that it's a really tough matchup?
Yeah, so you never can play the opponent, right? So you're playing the game of baseball, and we talk about that a lot. Whether it's whoever's on the other side, whether it's someone that we feel we should be beating by a lot, or someone that's going to be a really tough competition, you can't get caught up in playing the opponent. We have to have enough faith in our values, in our system, that it's going to give us a chance to win. The numbers from these guys since they were freshmen to now on varsity, they're 120 and 24. In the last 82 games, they're 76-6. So, that says a lot in the system and what they have done. So we can't worry about what, whether it's Joliet Catholic or whoever we're playing, what they're going to try to do. We have to be prepared for it, but we can't worry about, get caught up in that. Because if you get caught up in that, you're going to lose the focus of what you're supposed to be doing.
Is there a word that you would use to describe this year's team?
I'd have to say focus. I'd have to say laser focus, really. We've been in some tough situations. We played the team from Indiana, the number 1 3A team there. That was a phenomenal game with, Louisville, a bunch of pro scouts. Indiana was there. It was as intense as of a game as a sectional final would be. So these guys, we went up early in the first. I think we scored 4, and then they scored 5. It was like a heavyweight fight, but we scored every inning. So I'll go back to when these guys were freshmen. We played homeward Flossmoor, and we were up late, and John Hughes was in. We were up in the 7th, and I said to my assistant, because they had a couple guys pumping 90, and Cooper. And those guys weren't intimidated at all. And there were a lot of guys watching this game. And I said to my assistant, regardless if we win or lose this game, I said, these guys are different, man. They're special. And I early on, I kind of recognized that. And they've done nothing to disappoint me, as a whole, as a group.
So, Coach, what is something, because at PBR, we always, our before events, we always give a speech, any knowledge that we can drop on these kids to help them succeed, whether it be, finding the right fit for college, or even as simple as just making your high school team. What are some things that can cross a kid off without them even touching the field, or, without you even seeing them play? They might be the best player in the state, but what is something that a kid can do that you automatically are not, you're not going to be in on that kid?
Yeah, so I would never cross a kid off without giving them a chance. I think at the maturation level that these kids are, they're going to make mistakes. It's not, it's not if, it's when, and what the severity of the mistake is going to be. And our jobs as educators is to make sure that we're making these learning moments so they can learn and grow from them. So, but my advice would be to make sure you hustle, make sure you're like your controllables. What are your controllables? Hustle, play hard, be a good teammate, act the right way when you fail. Like I think those are really important. And then academics. No matter where you go to school, you have to have a set of standard of academics. And if you want to put yourself in a position to play at the next level, you have to have standards of academics. So those things are important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You kind of just answered my next question. So I was going to say, what is something that can get a kid circled? Tryouts, whatever it is. Haven't seen them play yet. What can make a kid pop? What can make a kid, stand out to you?
I think that we look for not only guys that are going to be really good ball players, but are going to be good citizens, be good in the classroom, be good in the cafeteria, and then they're gonna be able to accept their roles, and you can communicate. We could talk about where you're at and where you think you should be, but in order to have a unique group and to get where you want to go, you have to have guys that are going to understand, like, this is what you need to help us be successful as a teammate. So we have guys. I have the same guy who's a senior that charts for me all the time. He charts their hitters, and we talk the whole game. He's helping me the whole game. He's a senior. Like guys like that are invaluable. We have guys charting and doing and gunning behind home plate. Like all that stuff is really important for us to be successful.
Absolutely. You said you had over 300 varsity players. I think that's about right.
Yeah.
What is one thing, or multiple things, it could be multiple, something they've all had in common, besides being tooled up, really good ball players? What is something, a consistent factor you've noticed that they've all had?
Well, you got to put the time in. I think that's one thing. Like, you have to put the time in. If you want to be part of our program, and I know everybody does things their own way, we condition in the off season 3 days a week. It's optional, but the kids have to they want to put the time in. So you have to put the time in. I think you have to buy into the system. You have to think high school baseball is important. I think travel baseball is really important, and I do work with the Sparks and coach for them in the summer. But there's got to be a good understanding that high school baseball is still important. And for us, and I can't speak for other programs, I think that's kind of why we have a lot of success.
For sure.
Coach,
For sure.
Yeah, and Coach, a good amount of the people that listen to this are actually coaches. So what is one thing or a piece of advice that maybe you would give to a younger coach in the state when they're trying to build a successful or winning culture?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can go into that. I think you have to have a vision, with expectations. I think you have to have a really good staff. I mean, I'll put our staff against any high school, maybe any college staff in the country. I have, Rod Mullocks, an IHSBCA Hall of Famer. I have, Michael Bowden, who you guys know well. I think he was on your first cover from PBR, a #1 draft pick, played in the big leagues. And then we have a guy named Jim Tomey, first ballot. Yeah, he was all right. First ballot Hall of Famer. My assistant John Saraceno. I got one of my sons on staff. That played for me, my son Joseph. So we got a really good staff. And my AAD, is a state champion and a Hall of Famer. Is someone else that is always kind of looking and giving us advice. So that's important to surround yourself with a good staff. And it's not just the varsity staff. My lower level staff is really good, and you have to have a system set up. So what we're doing at the varsity level, they have to understand this is what we're done at the freshman level and the JV level, because I don't want to be reteaching. I want to be refining at the varsity level, because I think our system is in place, and you have to have coaches that want to do that. I remember, when I was a young coach, Jack Kaiser from Oak Park was, one of the greatest coaches in the Illinois high school baseball. He was in the front row of every clinic. taking notes. And I'm like, this guy, he knows everything, but he's there learning, taking notes. Watching Gordy Gillespie speak, like, you never could stop learning, if you're a young coach. And I think sometimes some of the younger guys think that, they come out of playing college ball. Playing and coaching are kind of two different things. It's a different lens you're looking through. And then when you're a head coach, it's about 70% of dealing with everything else, and then 30% of coaching. If you're doing it right. I think organization's a big thing. That if you're a young coach, I think time management's important. I think sometimes people don't understand. When we play a home game, I have 4 hours of work after the game. I have 2 hours of paperwork, and then we tape the games. I rewatch the games, and I send out about 15 to 20 clips to our players on learning points we did good or on things we need to work on. So, like, you have to understand, if you really want to do this thing the right way and not cheat kids, you have to put time in, and you have to also understand that you're going to make a lot of sacrifices if you're going to do this thing the right way.
Yeah, for sure. That's really, would have never thought that, there'd be that much going into all that. That's really cool. So my final question for you, Coach, who was your inspiration for all this? Who made you want to get into coaching? And who, if anyone, do you try to model, not even your coaching style, maybe just you as a person, who inspired you to get into coaching? And then who do you try and coach, or even just live your life as, basically?
I am very, very fortunate. I had two parents that were very hardworking people and showed me the way to do things the right way. And that kind of, I think, gave me the foundation for wanting to help and going to education and coach. The way I got into coaching is my brother was the head coach at Nazareth in 1996, and his assistant had stepped down in February, and he said to me, and I was, basically newly married. He said to me, "Would you want to be my assistant for this spring?" And we didn't even have summer ball at Naz back then. And I'm like, sure. So I asked my wife. I said, it's going to be 3 months, and I'll be done. He's just in a bind. I'm going to help him out. Well, I don't know, 28 years later, how many years later, 29 years, seasons later, and Bill went on and got the head job at Maine South. In 2000, I took over at Nazareth. So my brother's been a huge influence on me. I had an assistant coach for years named John Syme, who was at Morton West for many years with Roger Hahn. I felt like I was like Joe Torre and he was Don Zimmer in the dugout. Just a wealth of knowledge and someone to be able to pick off of. And then, when you talk about, like, in my eyes, like coaches in high school baseball, I know he's not coaching this year, but Dom Savino at Glenbrook North is to me, he's one of my best friends and one of the most knowledgeable people I know as far as the game. So they've all been an influence in me, and I like to, watch videos and listen to, Nick Saban and other people talk about culture and how they are successful. Like, the biggest thing for me is just to keep learning. I never want to cheat our players and not be prepared and not give them the best possible experience while they're in our program.
That's awesome, Coach. That's a lot of great advice in here too, and I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and just kind of talk through this. And I know you've got a lot on your plate probably, and we just really appreciate it. And we wish you the best of luck the rest of the year.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. It's my honor. I really appreciate, like I said, everything you guys do for high school baseball and for the players. It's really beneficial for them.